I will be reading today from Psalms 126. That's Psalm 126. When the Lord turned again the captivity of Zion, we were like them that dream. Then was our mouth filled with laughter, and our tongues with singing. Then said they among the heathen, the Lord hath done great things for them. The Lord hath done great things for us, whereof we are glad. Turn again our captivity, O Lord, as the streams in the south. They that sow in tears shall reap in joy. He that goeth forth and weepeth, bearing precious seed, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing him sheaves with him.
Thank you, Garrison. Couldn't read that text probably without some of you, not all of you. There's probably a song, and Joe's going to fuss at me because I did kind of switch gears on him. He'd asked me earlier in the week, great job with the songs this morning already, brother. You'd have sung Bringing in the Sheaves, wouldn't you? How many of you know Bringing in the Sheaves? Oh, good. That song hits you in the back of the head. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. You go, okay, what is that? We're going to talk about that a little bit. Going and sowing. Psalm 126, interesting in the Old Testament here where David, this is alluding to that moment in history when they came back from Babylonian captivity. No doubt about that. It's obvious that they're in. If you'll remember coming home, and there's a great blessing about coming home. One of the things as I've gone home over the last several weeks is I go home every evening and you realize that we haven't had rain at all, right? No rain. I remind you that I live next door to a landscaper. Well, he did me the great service about a month ago. Wasn't it about a month ago? Plugged and reseeded my yard. Y'all are ahead of me, aren't you? It started trying to come up. There was no water. So about every afternoon, evening, Pam and I, we're just kind of trying to help it along because it's hitting the top of the ground going, there's nothing up here for me. Looking kind of lonely and spindly because there's been no rain. We need rain. And I know many of us have thought about that and prayed about it. We're bringing it. It's about a harvest. It's about when you're planting and you're looking forward to that moment. You see, here in Psalm 126, and one of the really cool things we're doing on Thursday night theology class, going to get a little pump for the class, Daryl, is talking about the Old Testament. But we're talking mainly about the New Testament. But the fact that the Old Testament is the background, the backdrop for everything we do in the New Testament. And it's never ceased to amaze me that all throughout the prophets and even in the Psalms, David alludes to the gospel and talks about the Messiah, the one who is to come. I love that moment, and we talked a little bit about this in class Thursday night when the individuals with John, his disciples, came up to Jesus and said, are you the one that we're looking for, or should we look for somebody else? Jesus doesn't say a word. He turns around, and I don't know if there's a blind person there, a lame individual, or someone who's mute. He heals them, turns around, and looks at the individual and says, what you've seen, go tell John. The blind see, the lame walk, the deaf hear. All of a sudden, Old Testament prophecy springs to life. And it is that life force. You see, Jesus, in a very powerful way, lived for others. It's supposed to be others. I put other. Be significant other. Matthew 20:28, that he came not to be served, but to be a servant. Acts 10:38 is one of the most succinct statements about Jesus in all of Scripture, but it simply says this: he went about doing good. That was his goal in life, to make a difference in the simple things. Tonight, we're going to look at a concept. I'm going to challenge you to dream small. Just think about that for a moment. Some of you, it'll trigger a song, but others, you'll think about that and go, what do you mean small? Well, there's a power in what Jesus did while he walked the face of the earth. It's obviously impacted so many people. What's the greatest thing you could ever do for another person? Now, there's probably a multiplicity of thoughts that just race through the various individuals that are in this audience. What is the greatest thing you could ever do for another person? I hope by the time we're done here, there's going to be a signature thought in your mind. The key things in sharing the gospel, because I think that's what's addressed in Psalm 126. I had to stretch this a little bit to keep it in some sort of a cadence. First one is the going of the servant, because that's what he's talking about here. In Psalm 126, as he makes reference to the fact that, if you'll notice what happens in this celebration of returning from Babylon into Jerusalem, they're going home, and it says, our tongues were singing, our mouth was filled with laughter. They said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them, and the Lord has done great things for us, and we are glad. Bring back our captivity, Lord, as the streams in the south. They're going home. They're going somewhere. Well, in the Gospels, Jesus, most especially Matthew 28, verse 19, says what? Go ye therefore into all the world and preach the gospel. Go. Probably late 70s, early 80s. I should have looked this up because I'm doing this from a moment of memory right there. There was a book that was written by a man by the name of Ivan Stewart. And the title of that book was, Go Ye means Go Me. And during one of the most evangelistic times in our history as a church, individuals were going to their neighbors, they were going to their friends, and there was a familiar sound that was heard in these moments of going. It was boop, boop. You're going, what in the world was that? It was a sound, and here I age myself, because the first ones of these were done on vinyl. You had a phonograph, and you had a little. You're laughing, Pete, because you remember exactly what I'm talking about. So does Olean. Had this little film strip projector, little thing you thread through there. And on the LP, as the individual was talking, when it was time to advance to the next slide, whoop. Some of your kids going, what's film strip? Yeah, that was way back. There's still one of them out there. If you want to look at one, kids, there's one in the foyer, in the cabinet, in the history cabinet. There's a little projector out there that you used to look film through. Going means go me. A lot about that was so positive. A lot about it we learned from. The particular process itself. I still remember, Daryl and I talked about this the other day, the little OBS worksheets, and especially the yellow worksheet that had the ladder on it. That all needs to be redone. I understand the importance of the thought behind it, but on that ladder it showed so much of what we do, and then God's got a little slot right at the top. Well, the whole thing needs to be made over. God does it. We just kind of move it into an acceptance of and an appreciation for what God's done for us. And so, but in Mark 16, it says the same thing. Go into all the world. In Luke 19:10, this is a little different go. And I want to show you it's still going. But the move's not as large, because when you see Matthew 28 and Mark 16, go into all the world, it's almost daunting. It's almost overwhelming. Well, let me share something with you. You don't have to go far to go as a servant of God. Luke 19, I'm getting there. I told you I should have already been turning there myself. Luke 19:10. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save those who are lost. And in Luke 15, another text I had in mind, I may be sharing that later because I'm getting my thoughts a little tied up here this morning. Remember Luke 15, toward the end of that text, I'm going to go ahead and do it now because I'm thinking about it. Luke 15 and verse 28 and 29. This is the older son. He was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. Step from the house to what I titled several months ago, to the back porch. Small move, but he still went. He moved from where he was to where someone needed him. It's interesting that after they got back from Babylonian captivity, they kind of settled. Haggai, Malachi kind of address that in the prophets of him kind of writing in it. Wait a minute, God sends him a little message, goes, y'all are all home, settled in, nice houses. My house still here needs to be finished. And it's about finishing while we're here, and the purpose while we're here. We're going as a servant of God. Number two, it's about the flowing of the tears. Now, there were several reasons that they're teared up coming back into Babylon. One of the reasons is just the joy of returning home from captivity. Number two was coming back and seeing the state of Jerusalem when they came back. Historians say the city was in shambles. The temple had been devastated, destroyed. And so coming back into that was just, there was so much emotion. We need to retune our emotions as the children of God. We need to feel again. Matthew 9:36, a couple of passages in Matthew where Jesus, something happens with him, and we're told in Scripture that's very important in this. When he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them because they were weary and scattered like sheep having no shepherd. You seen anybody in that category lately? Any conversations across the lunch table with folks, maybe at school, maybe even at work? Individuals who they'll share with you their lives. Something's not exactly right. They're weary. They're scattered. They don't have a clue as to what's going on in their lives. Some of them are at their wits' end about what's going on. And you realize maybe in those kind of moments, we need to be moved with compassion like Jesus was. In Luke 15, I got ahead of myself. When you know somebody's angry, when you know somebody's struggling, when you know somebody's an issue, you move to that person, and you're moved because you realize they need something. We, as children of God, have something they need. It's not a matter of being arrogant. It's not a matter of acting like we have all the answers. It's not a matter of being a person that goes, well, I know everything there is to know about Jesus, and I can tell you everything you need to know about the Bible. None of that is involved. If you'll remember early on when Jesus sent the 70 out, we're going to look at a passage of that in a moment. What he told them was to trust him and to tell the folks about him. Those two things, to trust him and to tell the individuals about him. You see, because in the going and the flowing, there's also the sowing of the seed. And that's where we go to Matthew 10 while we're here. And I want to read what Jesus said. I'm highlighting verse 7. But listen, this is not the Great Commission. Later, as he would get ready to leave and go back to his Father and say, I want you to go into all the world. This was that moment where he's fulfilling the prophetic promise. I'm going to go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I'm going to go to the ones who are supposed to already have a relationship with me. Remember the Pharisees in John 8? We're children of Abraham. Well, here in Matthew 10 is where Jesus is getting ready to send the individuals to that group. Listen to what he says, beginning of verse 5. Do not go into the way of the Gentiles, and do not enter a city of the Samaritans. He's being incredibly This is not about, and we're going to go to that. He doesn't say that now. It's obvious one of the things that happens in Acts 2. Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the world. The plan of the gospel is to go to all nations. But God made a promise, and he kept that promise. because you are my people, Israel, because you are the chosen nation, I'm going to give you first shot at the gospel. But go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. You ever thought about that? I'm going to ask you a question. You can just respond in your mind. How many children of Israel do you think thought they were lost? We're Abraham. One of the things, you kept your lineage and your history. And one of the significant things that had happened in Jerusalem was, if I'm born into the right family, I'm a child of God. Especially if I've gone through all the rituals and the right, I'm in. This had to be a nerve-wracking. You're going into the homes. They're going into the homes of people they know and love, that they've known for years, most likely. Going into the homes of individuals who are on the Sanhedrin, talking to them about Jesus. And he says, do it this way. As you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Prophetic response to that. We've been waiting on this. The prophets talked about it. It'd be interesting to hear some of those conversations. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely you receive, freely give. What a phenomenal... Because this is an answer to what Jesus had said when he read the scroll in Nazareth. I've come to heal the brokenhearted, to heal. That's why I'm here. So this would have been that moment as they went. People going, as they're going into homes, anything wrong with your son or your daughter? Anything wrong with your wife or your husband? Let me take care of that and let me tell you the good news. Provide neither gold nor silver nor copper in your money belts, nor bag for your journey, not 2 tunics, nor sandals nor staffs, for a worker is worthy of his food. Now whatever city or town you enter, inquire who in it is worthy, and stay there till you go out. And when you go into a household, greet it. If the household is worthy, let your peace come upon it, but if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. And whoever will not receive you nor hear your words, when you depart from that house or city, shake off the dust from your feet. Assuredly I say to you, this is intense, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. They ought to send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to councils and scourge you in your synagogues. You will be brought before governors and kings for my sake as a testimony to them and to the Gentiles. But when you deliver you up, do not worry about how or what you should speak, for it will be given to you in that hour what you should speak. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father who speaks in you. Now brother will deliver up brother to death. A father and his child. Children will rise up against their parents and cause them to be put to death. You ever read this? The gospel is going to shake these cities up, and it's going to create all sorts of tension and trouble. You will be hated by my name's sake, but he who endures to the end will be saved. When they persecute you in this city, flee to another. For surely I say to you, you will not have gone through the cities of Israel before the Son of Man comes. A disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for a disciple that he be like his teacher, and a servant like his master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more will they call those of his household? Therefore do not fear them. There's nothing covered that will not be revealed, hidden that will not be known. Whatever I tell you in the dark, speak in the light. Whatever you hear in the ear, preach on the housetops. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. But rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a copper coin? And not one of them falls to the ground apart from your Father's will. But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Do not fear, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. Therefore, whoever confesses me before men, him will I confess before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before him, I will also deny before my Father who is in heaven. Do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be those of his own household. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. He who does not take his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. He who finds his life will lose it. He who loses his life for my sake will find it. He who receives you receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me. He who receives a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward, and he who receives a righteous man in the name of a righteous man will receive a righteous man's reward. Whoever gives one of those little ones only a cup of cold water in the name of a disciple, assuredly I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward. That's a lengthy reading. I rarely do that, but I wanted you to hear what Jesus said to 70 folks. When he said go, he said it's not, he was honest with them, and I'm trying to be, it's not easy. It's costly. But did you hear there's a reward. Even if it's just a cup of water that you go and give. We'll talk more about that tonight. Acts 8:4, it says they were scattered everywhere. Satan tried to destroy the church early on, sent Saul out in an attempt to do that, and all it did was kind of like when you try to put a fire out in the ashes and go everywhere. The fire spread. They went everywhere. They couldn't hush telling about Jesus. Luke 8:11, because do we still have the seed? Hello? Oh, it's not even on. Do we still have the seed? Okay, we do. Luke 8:11 says seed's the word of God. Well, if you go and sow, you got to mow. Real horrible, mowing's it's gathering, but that didn't rhyme with mowing. I'm going. It's bringing in the sheaves. Matthew 9:37. We looked at this passage last week, but I want to look at it again. It was Jesus. Earlier in 10, when he says, "The harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Pray the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his vineyard." I've been praying. I hope you've been praying about that. Elders are looking at ways that we can more effectively reach into not only this community, but into the surrounding areas. 1 Corinthians 3:7, there's a promise that is made by God. And he always keeps his promises. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, many of you know this text already. You know what I'm talking about? It's where Paul's talking about reaching out. In verse 6, he says, "I planted, Apollos watered, God gives the increase." So then neither he who plants is anything, nor he who waters, but God who gives it. It's about God. It's not about you, not about me. But for some reason, God still needs us, wants us. My plea, your plea, should be help me to live like others, or for others, so I can live like you, so I can be the one who's going Sowing. In Psalm 126, another passage, he talks about, help me to pray for others. So this week I challenge you, I need you to think of the name or names of individuals that you need to pray for an opportunity to touch their lives, to go to them, to share what you have. And as a result, to reach out. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. What is the greatest thing that you can do for another person? Share what God has done for you. There is no greater gift that you'll ever give another individual. And just a moment, we'll sing a song, and we'll sing that song. There may be some of you that need to respond to the invitation of Jesus. Our elders will be available for that. If it's prayer need, they're there for that. If it's a need to assist you in being obedient to the gospel of Jesus Christ, they're there for that as well. Penitent faith, confession, and baptism. If it's a need to share information where we can be more aware of a need that you have and be motivated to assist in some way to go to you, we're here to do that as well as we stand and as we sing.